How the Reynoldsburg School District Got Its Shape. Part 10, 1992 through 2025, into the present. As a reminder, here's what the boundaries of the Reynoldsburg City School District looked like in August 2025. Where we left off in Part 9, the Reynoldsburg School District had been working to pull in as much of the city's newly annexed territory as possible, causing it to clash with Licking Heights local schools where most of that territory lay. But with the Territorial Agreement of 1991 signed and approved by the State Board of Education, the Reynoldsburg School Board was able to turn their attention to a number of bond-financed building projects, including a new elementary school, Taylor Road Elementary, renovations to the high school campus, along with the addition of a field house and a new bus garage. But there were still some boundary changes to come. 1992 through 2002. Tired of winning. The year 1992 marked 6 years of the win-win agreement, which meant that it was time for member districts to revise it as needed and renew their membership. In those 6 years, the agreement had helped to create the bewildering map of islands and archipelagos in central Ohio school districts that still exists today. Consider the introduction to this Columbus Dispatch article from July 1992. When the new Columbus Public Schools treasurer and her husband were looking for a house recently, they found one they liked on a cul-de-sac that was clearly inside the city of Columbus. Because she had assured the Columbus Board of Education she would live in the school district, Patricia A. Greenwood was confident the house she liked would meet her requirements. After all, a Columbus school, Old Orchard Alternative Elementary at 800 McNaughton Road, was nearby. But as close as she would have been to the school, the house was in the Reynoldsburg School District, one of only 3 on the block outside the Columbus district. The article goes on to give the history of the win-win agreement, leaving the reader to infer that this agreement is the reason why those 3 houses near Old Orchard Elementary were not in the Columbus School District. Of course, you and I know that these are the houses on Strawberry Hill Drive, whose fate was determined in 1967, 2 decades before win-win. The point is that win-win had become such a synonym for goofy school district boundaries that it was even getting blamed for districting craziness that happened years before it. None of the school districts were particularly keen on renewing win-win, but they considered it better than the alternative. However, the cost-benefit math was a bit different for the Reynoldsburg School District. The school board reasoned, what would the Columbus School District do if the Reynoldsburg School District decided to bail? Claim all those common areas? Well, except for the parcel on Tusing Road, all of those areas were residential. So losing them to Columbus schools would actually make things a little bit easier financially. Ultimately, though, the school board decided to stay in. So in 1994, when the city of Columbus annexed 100 acres of Truro Township along McNaughton Road, a little south of East Broad, this area was automatically transferred into the Columbus School District. These days, the area is the site of a housing development called McNaughton Place Lane. Yes, it's a street with 2 suffixes, McNaughton Place Lane. Don't get it confused with plain old McNaughton Place, which is the name of the neighborhood, and certainly not with McNaughton Road. And so here's the decorative sign at McNaughton Place Lane and McNaughton Road. In 1998, it was time to renew the win-win agreement once again. But this time, the Reynoldsburg School Board was certain. Reynoldsburg schools were out. And so, when the city of Columbus annexed another 10 acres near East Broad Street and McNaughton Road between 1999 and 2002, they stayed in the Reynoldsburg City School District. So did the 87 acres that made up the eastern half of Reynoldsburg Village when the city of Columbus annexed them in 2000. 1996, Kingswood Farms. Back in 1991, the city of Reynoldsburg had annexed 35 more acres of Jefferson Township belonging to retired farmer William Cady. In December of that year, the Reynoldsburg School District's school board asked for it to be transferred, but the transfer didn't actually happen until 1996. The reason may have been a snag that Mr. Cady ran into, as described in an article in the Columbus Dispatch. William Cady's 35 acres of old farmland on East Broad Street is either a swamp, a wetlands wildlife habitat, prime residential property, or the path to a comfortable retirement. It depends on whom you ask. It's a mess, is what it is, Cady says. Cady thought selling the property at 7463 East Broad Street in Reynoldsburg would provide him with a nest egg for retirement. Homewood builders thought the land was perfect for a subdivision. The Sierra Club sees it as undiscovered wetlands. Neighbors would just like to see an end to the mosquitoes that swarm out of the swamp every year like a squadron of MiGs. After Cady quit farming the property, its drainage tiles became clogged, causing a lake of standing water to form there over the last 20 years. Cady's deal to sell the land to Homewood fell through last week after attorney William Goldman, representing Cady and Homewood, withdrew his request to have the property zoned for residential development. Goldman said he dropped the request after the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency told him that part of the property might be wetlands and he would need permits from the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers for development. Hugh Crowell, an EPA environmental scientist, said he notified Goldman that permits might be needed. Wetlands are protected under the federal Clean Water Act. Crowell said he inspected the property last week. There is a strong possibility that wetlands are present. Chances are extremely high that they will require a permit. Property owners often don't realize they need a permit for construction on wetlands, Crowell said. The earlier we can catch these things, the better off everyone is. John Jacob, conservation chairman for the Central Ohio Sierra Club, inspected the property, and it is definitely a wetlands, supporting flora and fauna common to Ohio wetlands, he said. If Cady would sell it, I'd like to see it go to the metro parks or one of the funds that has been set up to purchase wetlands, Jacob said. It would be a tragedy to have it go to a developer. Cady said he'd like to drain the property and sell it, but he's afraid of fines from the EPA. A lot of people have complained about that swamp, Cady said. Now it looks like they'll be stuck with it. Once the tragedy was well underway, the Reynoldsburg School Board and the Gahanna-Jefferson School Board came to a pretty quick agreement. Unlike Licking Heights, most of the Gahanna-Jefferson City School District is located north of East Broad Street, which forms a natural boundary with the Reynoldsburg City School District. They agreed that it is in the best interests of both school districts that the territory be transferred into the Reynoldsburg City School District to further the goal of having East Broad Street serve as the boundary between the two school districts, and that this transfer should be completed before the territory is developed. However, the two districts didn't bother with the other scraps of Gahanna-Jefferson schools that remained south of East Broad Street. So today, we see these two small islands of that school district surrounded by parts of the Columbus, Reynoldsburg, and Licking Heights school districts. They also didn't bother with the Donato's Pizza about half a mile to the west. So here's how the borders of the Reynoldsburg School District looked at the turn of the 21st century, with the city of Columbus common areas shown in light blue. 1993 through 2005, Joint Ops and the Growth Corridor. In Part 9, we noted that the Reynoldsburg School District didn't get completely frozen out of the economic development going on in Jefferson and Lima townships, thanks to the out-of-the-box thinking that allowed for a Reynoldsburg Growth Corridor and a Joint Operations Area. The Growth Corridor consisted of two tracts that abutted the end cap parcel at the intersection of Summit Road and Refugee Road. A 90-acre rectangle of land extending further north into Lima Township, and a 500-acre tract stretching further east and a little bit further south into Etna Township. So here and here. The end cap itself was already stipulated to be in the Reynoldsburg School District. The agreement guaranteed that any other pieces of that corridor annexed by the city of Reynoldsburg shall automatically be transferred into the Reynoldsburg City School District, effective with the effective date of annexation, without further action by the boards of education or by the State Board of Education. The Joint Operations Area was that area between the Trotter Farm on the south and East Broad Street on the north, these days occupied by the Shops on East Broad Shopping Center. This area would stay in Licking Heights. The unique aspect shared by both these areas was the Shared Facility Program. Students in either area could enroll in either school district with none of the hassle of inter-district transfer red tape. And, of course, there were rules for how the property tax in both areas would be divvied up. The map below shows the Joint Operations Area and the Growth Corridor. Such high hopes. The Growth Corridor proved to be a mirage. This started to become clear in 1993 when the city of Reynoldsburg busted out its biggest annexation attempt in decades. It wasn't as big as when Reynoldsburg tried to annex 8,000 acres to pull in the entire eastern half of Truro Township, but it was big, more than 1,000 acres in Lima Township. Imagine taking the eastern boundary of the Growth Corridor and extending it all the way to Mink Street. Everything between that line and the western piece of the Growth Corridor is what the city was proposing to annex. The residents of Lima Township hated that idea so much that they struck a deal with the city of Pataskala. Pataskala would annex Lima Township in its entirety, so there would be no more unincorporated pieces of it anywhere for Reynoldsburg or any other city to even think about annexing. Don't believe me? Check it out. The big, yellow, mostly square shape that is now most of Pataskala used to be Lima Township. The jaggy appendage on its east side is what the city of Pataskala used to be. And even crazier, the mega annexation has created 2 squares of the city of Pataskala surrounded by city of Reynoldsburg territory. See them? Yes, you're right. Here they are, right over here. So the Lima Township part of the Growth Corridor was gone. How about the part in Etna Township? In fact, the city of Reynoldsburg did annex a piece of it in 2005. Take a look. The Maplewood Summit Place parcel that straddles Section 4 and Section 3 lies completely in the Growth Corridor. And furthermore, the part lying in Section 3 features this facility. It's the Reynoldsburg High School Summit Campus, and further down the Summit Elementary School. Yes, we've come to the question of why 4 of the Reynoldsburg School District's buildings, including this one, are not actually located within the Reynoldsburg City School District itself. 2005 to 2010, Wagoner and Summit. In the early aughts, the Reynoldsburg City School District went into high gear to build some new schools, taking advantage of a new opportunity available to Ohio school districts. As I wrote in my History of Our District's Bond and Levy campaigns, after DeRolf, the Ohio School Facilities Commission was created to help school districts across the state fund new buildings. Here's how it worked. If your district was willing to put up a certain percentage of the funds needed to do a building project, the state would provide the remaining funds. Superintendent Richard Ross and the board went big. The district didn't get just one building out of the deal. Between 2006 and 2012, local money and OSFC funds brought us Slate Ridge Elementary, Wagoner Road Middle School, now Wagoner Road Elementary School, Wagoner Road Junior High, Summit Road Elementary, and the second Reynoldsburg High School campus on Summit Road. But where to put those buildings? Since as early as 1960, acquiring land to build schools on had been a recurring issue for the district. Developers were happy to build houses and advertise that they were in the Reynoldsburg School District, but less willing to help the district add the buildings to accommodate those new families. Few were willing to donate land. Some were willing to sell at cost, but the discussions would get mired in haggling over whether at cost meant before or after the improvements a developer had put in. In 1971, the board had gotten the land for Baldwin Road Junior High by seizing the opportunity to buy land that had been unavailable during the construction of the interstate highway but had just been released. And there was the strange case of Taylor Road Elementary and the Inez Woods tract from an earlier chapter. My best guess is that getting land could be so tricky, the Board of Education took the attitude of, if no one has said we can't do it, we'll do it. So, even though you might assume a school district's buildings would be in the actual school district, nothing prevents a school board from buying land wherever it needs to. So in 2003, they bought the land for the Wagoner Road campus from the Reno Holding Company, the outfit that had been buying up all the land that Limited Brands would be building on and getting it annexed into the city. As with Baldwin Road Junior High and the land near I-70, this land seems to have been sold off once it was clear it wouldn't be needed. This land had been part of the Licking Heights School District for a dozen years, but it was still right across the street from residences that were still part of Reynoldsburg schools, so... And here's the Wagoner Road entrance to the site of Wagoner Road Junior High and Wagoner Road Elementary School. Now, what about the Summit campus? The city had annexed the tract containing it in 2005, and from that moment on, that entire tract should have been within the bounds of the Reynoldsburg City School District. The Board of Education bought the site itself in 2007, and Summit Road Elementary and the RHS Summit campus opened in 2010. So why didn't the 1991 territorial agreement kick in? The answer seems to be that this issue got pulled into an ugly lawsuit that the Reynoldsburg and Licking Heights school districts had been pursuing since 2001. The Creative and Collaborative 1991 agreement, with its Joint Operations Area and Growth Corridor, had foundered when it came time to distribute the tax money coming in from all that newly developed land. The two school boards disagreed on how the calculations had been done, with the Reynoldsburg board's attorneys saying, in essence, show your work, and the matter ended up in court. The Reynoldsburg School Board lost an initial ruling and then two appeals before it gave up in 2011, agreeing to pay Licking Heights $1.1 million. In the middle of all of this, there was the Maplewood Summit Place annexation and the supposedly agreed upon school district territory transfer. But according to former board members, the Licking Heights superintendent insisted upon the area staying in the Licking Heights School District. In 2015, the two school boards signed an amended agreement that basically said, okay, we're not doing this joint operations thing anymore, and forget about the growth corridor. The amended agreement included the map below, making the boundaries official. So here is the end cap, and here is the area containing the Summit Road campus in Licking Heights territory. Boundary check 2025. So now, Let's jump to our final boundary check in the current year of 2025. It's the same as the picture we saw in Part 1. The shape of the Reynoldsburg City School District hasn't changed since the 2015 amendment to the 1991 agreement with Licking Heights, except for a teeny adjustment along the Taylor Road extension as it crosses from Licking County into Fairfield County in order to accommodate an apartment block that straddles the line. Down there. You'll notice that the city has finally looped in all of Fairfield County between I-70 and the county line. And for what it's worth, the Reynoldsburg School Board asked for it to be transferred in 1998, but the answer must have been no. As the city of Reynoldsburg has annexed areas along Summit Road and housing has begun to go up there, it's become an increasing source of frustration to families moving in who assume the school across the street or a quarter mile away is where their kids will go, only to find out they'll be going to a school in Licking Heights or Southwest Licking. There's been talk here and there of transferring some of those neighborhoods into the Reynoldsburg School District before they were built. But at least from my stance as a board member, we're struggling enough financially to deal with the students we have. We won't turn them away if they're in our district because, as a public school district, we're committed to serving everyone in our borders. But being asked to take them on, knowing we don't have the funds to do it, and without other funding provided somehow, it hasn't been something we've been willing to do as a board. Looking back on more than 125 years of Reynoldsburg School District history, we can see that this dependence on local property taxes has been the source of disruptive and destructive school district boundary changes at just about every stage. The bungled bond issue of 1920 that seems to have precipitated the breakup of the Truro Township School District. The failure of the city of Columbus to consider school district tax implications when it annexed massive tracts of land in the 1950s, leading to the final dissolution of the Truro Township School District, years of litigation with Jefferson local schools, and dozens of school district islands and archipelagos. The years of litigation between Columbus and Reynoldsburg school districts over the territories along McNaughton Road in the 1960s, leaving some families wondering each summer which school they'd be in for the next school year while the lawsuits dragged on. The win-win agreement of 1986, which incentivized the creation of dozens more school district islands in the Columbus metropolitan area. The 25-year dispute between Reynoldsburg City Schools and Licking Heights local schools that cost our school district $1.1 million and is still reflected in seemingly absurd boundaries where these school districts meet. In fact, taking on this research has made it ever more clear to me that what the Ohio Supreme Court decided in the DeRolf case is true. We do not have a constitutional system of school funding in Ohio. Indeed, who on earth thought it was a good idea to base a statewide system of schools on the widely varying value of local properties? How could they have possibly hoped for a system like that to be thorough and efficient, let alone equitable and adequate? That's beyond the scope of what I wanted to know when I started this project, but it's definitely a question that we all need to think about now. Thanks for watching How the Reynoldsburg School District Got Its Shape.